Hey guys, Jay at Product Performance. Okay kids, check it out. Yep, I've got your favorite book out again. I'm going to try something a little different here. I don't think I've seen anybody do. I'm going to, instead of everybody else showing you how to put a shift kit or valve body modification kit in or whatever, I'm going to show you how it works. So we're not just going to follow instructions and put things in and take things out. We're gonna question every move here, and I'm gonna make my best attempt to explain to you what's going on. So, okay, I've got a popular shift kit here, and I can say shift kit because it is actually a Transgo product. And this thing's fine. I'm not endorsing it, or I'm not criticizing it either. I'm neutral on it. I don't use it anymore, but I have many years ago when I was first starting out. When I first started out, I had a 67 Galaxy as a daily driver, and it had a C6 in it. And I kind of got obsessed with this hard shift thing. I thought that was cool. And I put one of these kits in my car. I don't remember which one. I think maybe a B&M or something. And, well, the first time I did it, it didn't work. So the transmission, I took a working transmission, I put a valve body kit in it, and then I had nothing. I had no gears. The thing didn't do anything. So I went to the transmission shop next door, and the guy was just a certified lunatic. And, 35 years later, I can understand why this business will do it to you. So I asked him for help, and yeah, I got an earful. You put one of those goddamn shift kits in there. He starts yelling at me. I'm like, oh boy, I better get the hell out of here. All right. Yep, that was dumb. Sorry. So I went home and I went over the instructions again very carefully, and, took the valve body back out and went over the instructions very carefully and figured out what I did wrong. And it worked beautiful after that. And man, I was so proud of those hard shifts. I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And I really just wish I knew how it worked. I just had no clue. I did what it said, and once I followed the instructions properly, it worked. And man, I was excited. So proud of that. Until my father rode in the car and told me, you're ruining the transmission with that. You're just beating up in your drive line, kid. That's dumb. Well, I thought my father was dumb, but yeah, he was kind of right. I hate admitting that, but there's a happy medium in all this. So, anyways, not here to reminisce about my checkered past. We're going to take a look at this, and I'm going to go over this quickly because this could get into being a very long video. I'm already almost 4 minutes in on nonsense, so I'm sorry, Tiffany. I will hurry up. You know me. I make a big deal out of everything. But that's also my good side, too. So, alright. So, first thing they tell you, they show you this picture of the separator plate. And they tell you, enlarge this hole. Well, what is this hole? Why are we enlarging it? What does it do? Well, first of all, let's kind of go over what's the reason that most people do one of these valve body kits. Most people do it because they want firm shifts. Now, shops that are working on daily drivers, old lady cars or whatever, and not an insult on old ladies, but old ladies are actually smarter than us. They don't want the thing to bang in the gear, so They have some sense. Us motorheads have none. But, you know, generally these are done by motorheads like you and I because we want hard shifts. We think this makes the unit live longer. And that's not necessarily true. And that's a whole nother topic for another time. But so let's just go with the enthusiasm, and yeah, we want this thing to really shift hard and have fun. Trip tires and all that kind of fun stuff. So that's most of the reason that we put these in. So how much of this kit is really for that, and how much of it is for, you know, say fixing problems that the unit may have? You know, and this really varies depending on the unit. I'm working with a C6 here because A, it's a simple unit comparatively, and it's something I'm very familiar with. So let's kind of go through this quickly. So the first thing they tell you to do is enlarge this hole with the drill that came in the kit. And, you know, we don't really think about what the size of the drill is or really care or understand it. We just, yep, okay, this is the hole, great, drill it open. Would it be better if we made it bigger? You know, that's always the question. Well, maybe, maybe not. Let's understand what this hole is. So, what the heck is this hole for? So I'm going to go back to the book here. All right. Here it is in the circuit. Okay. Shift control supply system. So you see this restricted portion. This red is line pressure. You see this little restricted portion in the passage, and then this loops around, and just ignore this other offshoot. You know, the oil's doing a lot of different things, but we're staying focused on one circuit. So then the oil also comes up here, and this is a ball, okay? This is your separator plate. This is actually referring to this hole in the separator plate. And so is this. This would be this hole, okay? This large hole. So what's happening here is the oil is traveling in this direction. It'll come up. It's going to seat the ball. The ball is going to plug this hole to stop the oil from flowing through it. It may leak a tiny bit or something, but for the most part, it's going to stop that flow. And the flow is going to be restricted towards this smaller hole in the plate, or a bigger hole once you make it bigger. And then this comes up and goes into our 2-3 shift valve. So what happens is when this valve strokes, it basically sends oil to the servo release and to the direct clutch, and that shifts us into third gear. So what this hole is, we're just opening up that restrictor in the separator plate so we get more oil flow going to it. And it basically just makes the shift happen quicker and more firm. Now the ball, the reason we got the ball here is when we want this circuit to release the oil, we don't want the oil to be struggling to go through this small hole. We want it to release quickly, so the ball will unseat and then also allow the oil to go through the big hole as well. So you have the small hole and the big hole in conjunction, and that is these two holes on the separator plate. So this is basically your 2-3 upshift, and then when we release the third gear, say go back into second or whatever, we're going to come through the big hole and also the small hole. One thing you can do, instead of drilling the plate, I'll give you a little tip here. Just don't put this ball back in if you want to really fill that circuit quickly. Just take the ball out, don't bother drilling the plate. But there is kind of a, again, we talked about happy medium, so you know, maybe the factory hole's a little small, a little soft for your taste. You can sneak that a little bit bigger until it's like you like it. That's something you can play with. Very time consuming and very rewarding when you get the way you want it, because you're not bound by the hole size the kit tells you to use. Maybe that's too firm for you, you know, or maybe you don't want your 2-3 shift hard and you may not want to drill that hole. Whatever, it's your choice, but at least now you understand it. Now you have a choice, because the kit doesn't explain any of this to you, and I've never seen anybody else explain it either. I'm sure somebody has. I just, you know, don't send me a bunch of hate mail because you made an awesome YouTube video on this already. I just didn't see it, that's all. So, all right, so let's continue on here. So again, we got a 3-speed transmission, so we got a 1-2 upshift and a 2-3 upshift. And we've already covered, for the most part, the 2-3 upshift. Okay? So what else is this kit addressing? There's a lot of writing in here, and it's just instructions on working on the valve body, not necessarily modifications, but... So this shows us our 2 pressure regulator valves. There's an early style and a late style. And they give you a new spring. That's just raising your line pressure. That's kind of self-explanatory there, pretty simple. C6, in my opinion, already makes a lot of line pressure. I don't typically see a reason to do that. But one of the things that these kits generally don't address, there's a couple that actually do. They don't explain it, but they actually give you a new boost valve and sleeve. What they're actually trying to do is back off pressure, from what I've seen, which is good. I like that. It's a unit, you know, especially when you put a tight regulator spring in, it makes a lot of pressure. It can make too much pressure, and honestly, and self-destruct the unit. You'll lose your forward gears. And I did a video on that on the special forward clutch piston that we make. So you can reference that if you want to. That's the reason for that, is when you're bumping pressure up with these kind of kits or going full manual, that piston will save you. You can also modify pressure as another way of getting around that, but sometimes you need the pressure depending on the power level. Again, you know, I don't want to go too deep into this because it'll take me a few hours at least, so we're going to stay simple here. So you're just changing that. That's kind of easy there. You can kind of figure that one out. Now this here, again, I'm going to go quickly. So this is a scheduling valve, and it tells you to put a new orange spring here. And there's different ways of doing this. Some of them use a spacer, some of them, you know, various different springs. This spring here that comes in the kit, it's a very, very, very strong, tight spring. Basically what it does is keep this valve from moving. It keeps it pinned into the bore. And what this is for is it allows you to downshift back into first gear regardless of road speed, which is kind of dangerous. But the intent of it is that if you want to manually shift the unit, because I know you guys have seen these terms, okay? Oh, it's a manual / automatic valve body. It's both. Well, on a C6, that's all it is. You're basically just taking the scheduling valve, which is a safety. The factory incorporated a safety circuit into this so that if you were going fast, you know, 50, 60 miles an hour, and slam the shifter down into first, it won't lock up the wheels and spin you off the road and crash and die. You know, I mean, that's exactly what that is for. It's a safety. But is, you know, hopefully educated motorheads, you know, performance driving, track driving, that sort of thing, hopefully you won't do that. We hope you're smarter than that. You're not going to do that because you do have the ability to do it. And the reason to put this in is if you want to hold manual first indefinitely and just, wind out the motor to $8,000 or whatever before you shift it. Because if you don't do this modification and you have it in manual low, it's going to shift on the governor still. So you'll have it in manual low, but at some point it's going to shift out of first and go into second. So that's the reason for this. So that's what that does here. They don't tell you this, I don't believe. I haven't read this instead of instructions in, I don't know, probably 20 years. I'll be honest. I still had it, but I haven't looked at it in a long time. So let's go on. That's an important one to know. So they give you a new valve, a modified valve for the servo modulator. And here they're going to have you replace, they generally had two springs, inner and an outer, one fit inside the other. They give you a new spring to replace that. So what is this? Well, that is, if we look at the circuit here, so here's that big accumulator and that big spring, and here's the valve that they give you a new one of. And if you look, so here's line pressure coming in. It's going through this series of valves. Also goes through 2-3 back out. Don't worry about that. Comes up, servo apply. So servo apply is second gear. So that's your 1-2 shift. So what's happening with these two valves? These two valves, very, very clever design. They basically regulate the oil going to the intermediate servo. They'll basically fill it slowly, and it'll vary some depending on how much throttle you're giving it and things. It's throttle responsive, which is cool. So they're really trying to just dial in that 1-2 shift, and that's what these valves do. So any changes of the springs or the valve change or any of that will change that rate. So basically in this kit they give you a new valve, this one here. What they're doing is they're modifying it so the oil just kind of runs through the valve and ignores the accumulator valve, and it just allows it to fill fast. So essentially what you're doing, if you were to follow this oil, if you were to say jump over to this passage and just avoid all this, so you're basically just jumping here, you're not going through this regulator anymore by changing that valve. And there's also other ways of doing this too, but you can get creative there. I have a way of doing it where I actually physically bridge this passage in the valve body so it just avoids this and just gives you a better 1-2 shift. It also does affect the 2-3 to some extent too, because the intermediate servo is applied when you're in second gear and also stays applied when you shift into third. And we talked about that in another video about 2-3 flare. So also this oil, when the servo pushes off, this oil backfeeding through this circuit will also be regulated and help control that 2-3 shift. So it's doing something there as well. Okay. So as far as, just wanting to firm up the 1-2, 2-3 shifts, we've pretty much done that. Now here's another modification. You got this cutback valve, okay? And they tell you to put a spring here. Well, what this spring does is it basically, it coil binds, okay? So it's just a spacer. Even though it's a spring, it creates just a spacer. So this valve is stuck at the top of the bore and can no longer be pushed to stroke. And let me see if I can quickly find this in the circuit. I'm going to show you what that's doing. And that's another mod for something very performance oriented. Oh, give me a second here. Where is that page? Let me put you on hold for 1 second so I don't waste your time. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. Alright, so here's your cutback valve in the circuit. So here's what we got here, and this is another topic about how this pressure regulator works and this boost valve, but basically hydraulics oppose the pressure regulator valve and raise and lower pressure. It's throttle responsive system. Very cool how it works. So what's happening, so the yellow oil is throttle valve, which means that pressure is reduced from line pressure significantly, and it's sensitive to throttle position. Okay, that runs off the vacuum modulator. So why are we pinning this valve here? Well, normally what happens is you have oil. Your boost valve has 3 different areas, okay, and different sizes. The small area here is your throttle valve. So this, as you give it more throttle, this pressure increases. It increases line pressure. Now in the second portion of this valve, we're also applying TV to it as well. Okay, so what that cutback valve does is when we get to a certain road speed, certain throttle position, etc., a little bit of a lengthy explanation on that I'm going to avoid and just try to simplify this. We're applying oil on 2 sides of this boost valve, okay? The third side is reverse boost. So that's only on in reverse. Reverse has a lot more pressure than forward gears does. Just a quick note there. But so what happens on the cutback valve is, like I said, when you get to a certain road speed, certain throttle position, this cutback valve will take this oil away from the second land, okay? And then you just have it on the first land. So what happens is it will dramatically reduce how much boost in line pressure we get, okay? So by pinning that cutback valve, we always have TV pressure on both sides of the boost valve. Basically just gives us more pressure, okay? So that's what that's doing there. And I am out of time, so I'm just going to go over the rest of this quickly. So 2-3 shift valve, they give you a new spring for that. 1-2 shift valve, they give you a new spring for that. And what they're trying to do is tailor when the shifts occur. It's debatable whether you're going to like that or not. They have their own ideas on how they, when they think the shifts should occur and how they should come in. And I don't always like it, changing those springs. I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I like the factory ones better. So just depends on preference. It depends on gearing. Depends on the vacuum signal coming from the engine. So, okay. That's essentially it. The rest of this is just, torque sequence and things like that, which is good. I like that. And they talk a little bit about the vacuum modulator and shimming it to change your shift points or adjusting it and all that. Those modulators are adjustable. So, okay. Quick overview, but that's essentially what's happening with this kit, what it's doing, and hopefully you understand it a little bit better, and you could maybe even critique it a little bit on your own to suit your own needs. That's kind of what I do, but of course I'm doing this for a living, and for most people, they're not going to sit and study a unit. They're just going to buy this thing, put it in, and it's going to be fine. You know, it's going to do what they want it to do for the most part, and they don't want to make a career out of this, and I can't blame them. This is a headache. So, anyways, I hope that was interesting to you, and hopefully you learned something. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on another one.